Now that our website is looking great locally, we need to push our code to GitHub to have it ready to be deployed. I'm not going to spend much time going over what Git or GitHub are, so if you need a refresher, there are many courses available in the LinkedIn Learning library to help you get started. Before we go any further, there are a few things I'd like to address. First of all, let's run our local website through the Lighthouse audit in the Chrome's DevTools. This is to see if there is anything we should fix before we deploy it. Here is the Lighthouse tab, and in here I'm going to click on Analyze Page Load. Okay, most of it is great, but there is something we could do to improve the accessibility of the website. The issue we have is that our social media links don't have a name or a label. And if we inspect them, they don't even have the alt attribute. So let's quickly add it to each social media logo in the control panel. I'm not going to go and add the alt attributes to every asset now, but you should definitely go back and do that. Or make sure you do that for any real website you will deploy. In Partials footer, I'm going to use the area label attribute to dynamically display the logo's alt, which can serve as a label of the link in our case. Let's save the file and rerun the audit. And we get 100% everywhere. Amazing. I also need to say a few words about deploying Statamic as a statically generated website, SSG. You could deploy your Statamic website using any number of services, such as Forge, DigitalOcean, or any others you would use for any other PHP or Laravel project. But you can also deploy it as SSG for free using services such as Netlify or Vercel. Free deployment sounds great. However, there is one downside of hosting a static Statamic site. We will lose the ability to use the control panel in the browser. So unlike, for example, WordPress, where you can log into admin panel from the browser, Statamic will give you an error. To add content, we will need to run the site locally, add the content using the control panel, push the changes to GitHub, and deploy the website. This is not ideal for our author that might not have the necessary technical knowledge to deal with Git and GitHub, but it's good enough for the purposes of this course. Furthermore, our form, as it stands, will not work either. The form is currently using Statamic's form tag, but if we deploy the website as a static site to Netlify, we will need to configure it. Because as a static site, we won't have access to the Statamic control panel, we won't see the form submissions there. However, Netlify can actually listen for any post requests and collect form submissions in its own dashboard. From there, you can have your submissions forwarded to your own personal email address. To make this work on Netlify, we need to add a data Netlify true value, as well as the action attribute pointing to a page we want to send the user to once they submit the form, and the name attribute to tell Netlify the form's name. And if you ever want to deploy the site as a dynamic site using Forge or similar, all you need to do is remove this action attribute from your form. Statamic will handle it automatically, so having it there would stop the submissions from showing in the control panel. Now that we have this housekeeping out of the way, we can finally generate a static website. To do that, we will need to have the Statamic SSG add-on installed. To install it, we need to run composer require statamic/SSG in the terminal. We will also need to publish the SSG config file, because when we generate the static site in a moment, our site will be generated into a directory which we will deploy later. but Statamic will not copy our static assets unless we tell it to in the config file. By static assets, I mean assets for some decorative images, such as the logo, the email SVG, or the quote marks SVG on our homepage. So let's open ssg.php and add a public path to assets. Once this is done, we can now run php please ssg:generate. Statamic will generate the static version of our site, including our assets now, and save it in storage app static. This is the directory that we will deploy later. The last step is to push our code to GitHub to be able to deploy it on Netlify. My project has already had Git initialized, so I don't need to do this step, but you might need to initialize Git now, add everything, and commit. Next, I'll go to GitHub, create a new repository called My Story, and link it to my local repo. Next, I'm going to push everything up to GitHub. Your branch may be called main or master or something else, but my one is called 0501. Okay, let's go back to GitHub and refresh the page. And our code is there. We are ready to link the project to Netlify in the next video.